Happy Sabbath, everyone. How are we feeling this afternoon? Nobody feeling bad? No. Well, some people might be feeling bad, but they're not saying it. Normally, or generally, when you ask a question like how persons are doing, the audience typically says good. But the ones who are not doing so well would not admit it. But nonetheless, I do hope that, if you had a very challenging week, that somehow today will equip you or empower you to have an overcoming week in the days ahead. So not to worry, even if you're not in the best of moods right now, the good thing about moods is that they change. They're not constant. They do change. So, happy Sabbath, and I hope that this sermon will be of some benefit to those who are really in need, and for those who, will be aware of what I will be presenting. It's some sort of reinforcement for you. I'm going to start by asking a question. What is one thing everybody has but nobody wants? And I say that fast, One thing everybody has but nobody wants it. What about life?
They want that.
You want more life?
They want that.
What about money?
Well,
Not really. Not all of us have money. And yes, we all have life, and we do want to keep it that way. But as you rightly echoed, we all have problems, but we don't want them. Is there anybody in the room who can say that they want problems and they want more problems? They want many problems. They have good problems, they have bad problems. Or maybe just problems in general. There are no such thing as good problems. You don't want to have so much money that you don't know what to do with it. That's a problem. It's not a problem. Interesting. So yes, you're right. We have problems, but we don't really want it. And just to give a definition of the word problem so that we're all on the same page, is that it is an uncomfortable or uninvited circumstance or situation that requires some amount of decision making. So it's uncomfortable, which is why people tend to not want it. Problems are uncomfortable. For example, are you hungry now? Is that a problem? All right. So to some people, if you're hungry, that's a problem. Is going to work a problem?
no, that is not a problem.
Going to work may not be a problem, but if you don't go to work is a problem. If you have no work is a problem. And so the best thing to do is to go to work to avoid problems. Right. And so if we're honest with ourselves, you'd all agree with me that we spend the vast majority of our lives trying to avoid problems. Would you agree? We try to avoid it. I mean, if it makes us uncomfortable, you want to avoid it. The problem with problems, however, is that problems are so unavoidable that not having a problem is a problem.
Well, it says who?
That's one of the problems with problems.
They're unavoidable.
They're so unavoidable. Even if you don't have any problems, that's a problem. And I see some people shaking their head like, having no problem is no problem. But I'll tell you why. As we get further along the presentation, you'll understand why having no problem is a problem. As a matter of fact, the person who believes that having no problem is not a problem seems to have a lot of problems. Think about it. If not having a problem is not a problem, you have a lot of problems. All right, next thing. The problem with problem is that we don't get to choose our problems.
That is a problem. That is it.
That's a major problem. We don't get to choose our problems.
Choosing easy one.
You know, think about a concept where you go to the problem store,
Yes. Good.
where you can purchase your problems. What sort of problems would you purchase? Think about it. Huh? Too much money. That's an interesting concept, but we don't get to choose. We don't have the luxury of choosing our problems. So at least not all of them. Some problems we do get to choose. And as I get further down in presentation, you'll understand. Problems are sometimes unpredictable, and that's a problem. You don't budget for problems. You know, like sometimes you can budget for problems. This is going to become due X time. You can prepare your mind for it mentally. What if you knew the landlord was going to give you an eviction notice? If you knew ahead of time, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem. But if 1 month before you get the notice, you don't have much time to prepare, that's a problem. It's an inconvenience. And the next thing about problems is that problems don't care that you're already going through problems. Problems don't care that you're going through problems. So JPS disconnect your light. NWC have a water lock off. You couldn't get to bed this morning to come to church. Say, you know, you get ready nonetheless, you leave out, you go to the bus stop to take the bus, rain start fall. And then you get a little wet and rain stop fall. You know, that's the worst. When rain start fall heavy and then it stop abruptly. And then the heat just comes on, you start to feel hot, miserable, sweaty, right? And then somebody drive past now and splash you, so now you're dirty. And you come to the place of God now, thinking that nobody's going to judge you for how you look. And then you sit down in a row and the sister skin up her face and she get up out of the seat, or the brother, not just sister, all right. Them skin up them face. Somebody said more than likely the sister. So you sit beside somebody now and them, you know, start to make up them face and thing, and they don't even ask you what happened to you this morning. They just sit and them see you and them just get up and them start to tell, boy, brother Jeremy stinking, oh him look so. Him never bathe this morning, never know say my light gone and my water gone. I'm do my best to come to church. I do my best. You don't know how I got here or what the circumstances I had. So problems are inconvenience. Nobody wants them. But the irony about problems is that we spend most of our time trying to avoid problems when the qualities, the characteristics, the experience of someone who went through the problem, we want those qualities. Yes. We want those characteristics. So we look at an entrepreneur who is making millions and billions of dollars, and they're living their best life, and they have the freedom and so on. And we want what they have. But we're not interested so much in the journey that that person took to get to where they are, or to have what they have. So it's like deciding that you want to build muscles, but you don't want to exercise. Or you don't want to go to the gym. You want to lose weight, but you don't want to diet. We all want the benefits, the qualities, the attributes of someone who went through the problem, but without the problem. And so we ask God, here's the paradox. We ask God to give us more patience, but we don't want it to be tested. We ask God to give us more strength, but we refuse to lift the heavy burdens or the loads. We ask God for wisdom, but we don't want the trials. A lot of wisdom is going to come through your trials, your experiences, your tests. Yes. But we don't want it. We want God to somehow download the wisdom, download the strength, download the patience in our brains, in our minds, without actually going through. So I tell people all the time, if you don't want patience, don't pray for it. don't pray for patience. If you don't want strength, do not pray for strength. Because the only way that's going to come is through trials and tribulation and tests. Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow. So what we need, where we need to get to is a place where the problems don't get in our way, but problems show us the way. So it's like a divine GPS that put things in your way to show you where you need to go, or God's divine curriculum that shows you what you need to study, what you need to learn in order to pass the exams. So what I want to do today is to introduce to you two perspectives on problems that should offer you some insights into why they exist, what do they mean, and how can we grow through them. And so hopefully at the end of the sermon, we will develop a more solutions-oriented mindset and not a problem mindset. You know what a problem mindset is? You ever talk to somebody and them just can't identify problem, but they have no solution? They're so comfortable just talking about their problems. They're easily identifying problems, but they have no solution. And so sometimes they come to you and they want to relate to you the problems that they're having, hoping that they will get some sort of advice. And then they don't take the advice. And you waste your time telling them what to do. You ever encounter that? The person just constantly coming to you about their problems. They want the help. They want the advice. But then they're so afraid to move. It's like the advice that they're getting, they don't want to take it. So we want to move from a problems-oriented mindset to a solutions-oriented mindset. Two perspectives. One, the philosophical perspective. And the philosophical perspective says that problems can give meaning and direction to your life. Meaning, without problems, you won't necessarily know where to go, what to do, what is your purpose. Problems give your life meaning. Hey, this is a message nobody really likes, because it's about problems. But here's why it's very important. One, we all have them. Two, once you have breath, even if you get rid of 10 problems, another 10 is waiting. If you look at your life right now, you better equip yourself with some skills to solve problems, because they are coming. And if you're not equipped, then you're going to be in some problems, right? So the philosophical perspective, keep this in mind, it gives your life meaning and direction. Let me read an article to you. Brother Fowler, or Deacon Fowler, alluded to it earlier with the Air India crash. Many of you heard about it, right? All right, so this BBC article says, student missed Air India crash by 10 minutes. She missed it just by 10 minutes. 10 minutes can mean life or death, Just 10 minutes. So she remembers being very angry and frustrated. Bumper-to-bumper traffic had delayed her car journey to the airport. And she missed the flight to London by 10 minutes. The 28-year-old was due to fly home on Thursday, which crashed shortly after takeoff, killing 241 people on board and about 8 on the ground. But after arriving at the airport less than an hour before departure, the airline staff turned her away. And she got very angry with the driver and left the airport in frustration. She says, I was very disappointed. We left the airport and we stood at the place to drink tea. And after a while before leaving, we were talking to a travel agent to find out how we can get a refund for our ticket. And then she got the call that the plane went down. So, you see, I've told you the story before. Sometimes the things that you think are problems, they're not real problems. It's something to save your life. Sometimes when you're getting ready for work and you're late You did everything that you could, but something happened, circumstances, and you're late. You want to rush to get to the place because it's important, and then you end up don't making it. Sometimes you being late is to save your life. If she was 10 minutes earlier, she would have been on the flight, and she would not have had her life. So, if you were the student, what would your immediate thought be? After learning now that the plane went down. Huh? What? You do what? You take delays gracefully. But it gives you a different perspective on life. Imagine, if she was 10 minutes earlier, she would have been killed. And so if she, as a student, was not living so much of a purpose-driven life, somehow her life has meaning, somehow her life has purpose. Because no, it's like a wake-up call for the person who, whoa, that could have been me. And so, as a person who survived the crash by being late, you want to turn your life around, so to speak. You want to go in a different direction. You want to stop taking things for granted that you've always taken for granted. You want to live life with deliberateness and purpose. Because your life was just spared, and of all the persons you survived, it must be for a reason. What is that reason? You understand where I'm going? And not only that, the man who survived the plane crash, him worse. Listen, that man was actually on the plane. He was on the plane, and of all the persons on the plane, he was the only one who survived. Now, why could that be? If you were that man, you would have, you'd have shaped up your life differently. If you were going to, for example, Vegas to have wild parties and drinking and just enjoy yourself, somehow your life now has some meaning because of this problem. But if you spend your life trying to avoid problems, you lose purpose, you lose direction, you lose guidance. The Apostle Paul, and I used this example on the spiritual workshop Monday night meeting earlier this week. The Apostle Paul himself faced some obstacles, and those problems that he was facing, he realized later on that he was facing those problems because God was redirecting him. It was a divine compass that he wanted to do something, but God was turning his attention to something else. Without those problems, he would not have known. He would have just been on his merry way doing whatever he wants to do with little impact or effect. So I'm reading from Acts chapter 16, verses 6 to 10. And it says, verse 6, Paul and his companions traveled through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia. When they came to the border of Mysia, they tried to enter Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them. And so they passed by and went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia standing and begging him, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." After Paul had seen the vision, he got ready himself at once, concluding that God had called him to preach the word there. Did you see the problem? He went to 2 places before he got the vision. He didn't know. And it could be a case where if he had turned his attention to those 2 places, he might have been armed, something terrible might have happened. And so God redirected Paul, giving him the vision, showing him that that's where he ought to go. The challenge, though, is that we don't have that foresight sometimes, or that vision. We don't have it. We don't have it. So what that requires of us is to have faith and to trust God's direction. And we have to pray to God and hope that, pray that he guides our every footsteps. The Bible story about Joseph now, found in Genesis 37. Everybody know the story of Joseph and what he had to encounter, but if you never heard it before, I'm going to read a portion of it so that you can have an idea of what was happening. Joseph was a young man, he was 17. He was tending his flock. This is Genesis 37, verse 2. He was tending the flock with his brothers, and he brought their father a bad report about his brothers. So it was like a informer. Yeah, man, Joseph was a little informer, man. And then, you see, because he was the favorite, it might have fueled his behavior towards his brother. I don't know if he was boastful about it and proud or whatever the case is, but he definitely brought some report to their father about his brothers, and it was not positive. So now, the Bible clearly states that Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons. And the reason being, he was born to him in the old age. And of course, it's from his favorite wife. That's very clear when you read the scriptures. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him. And they could not speak a kind word to the person. Can you imagine hating someone so much that you can't even speak something kind to them? You can't even tell them good morning. You ever hate somebody so much that you can't tell them good morning? Morning. And you're gone. Morning. You don't tell them nothing. Yeah, man. You just walk away. And sometimes you tell them morning and them don't even respond. But they hated him so much so that they couldn't say a kind word to him. And worse, he was a dreamer. This young man had dreams that one day his brothers would come to bow down to him. And even if it stopped there, which it didn't, it got worse, the parents were bowing down to him as well. And I don't know how he told the story, if he was arrogant with it or whatever, but they didn't like the dream. And you see, this is a very important lesson. Don't share your dream with everybody. Don't share your dream with everybody. I'm just saying, that's one of the lessons. You have some people that don't mean you know well. Them don't mean you're not good. Don't share your dream with everybody. And even the very person you think you can share your dream with, probably not. You have to just be careful. I give them piece of the dream, but not tell them the full thing. Like if I was Joseph, I probably would have said, I dreamt that I had some power, like some authority. But me not say who about down to me. I'm not going to tell him that.
Don't tell him that.
So, but he wasn't wise. He tell him everything. And he knew that they didn't like him to begin with. But he had to learn. He was only 17. He had to learn. So, as you know, the story goes, and I'll just summarize. Because of his dreams and because he was his father's favorite, they tried to kill him first. But one or two other brothers opposed the view that they should kill him, and instead they decided to sell him into slavery and then tell the father that he died. All right. Now, if I had those dreams, and I was confident that God gave me those dreams, and it will one day come to reality, I would question God. Because there's no way you're going to tell me that I'm going to come to a place of authority and power, but then you carry me through this journey of being a slave, being thrown in prison for a crime I did not commit, for a period of 13 years. Now, a lot of us probably have issues or problems that we've been dealing with for 2 years, and we're at the end of the rope with God. We're ready to give up or throw in the towels or turn our backs on God. And a lot of us in Joseph's shoe would have said, I'm done with this God business. It don't make no sense. Why should I be suffering? Why should I be going through all these problems? If you're honest, And listen, we have the entire scripture now, so we know the outcome. So you can know the outcome now and say you would have stuck through it or endure it. You can say that now. The whole time Joseph, he never had a phone to call his family to say, listen, daddy, this is what they did, you need to come look for me or whatever. He never had that, none at all. He never had the internet to know what was going on in the area where it was taken from. He had none of it. And so that's why when I say to you that you have to, when you're going through certain problems, trust God and rely on God, you don't have a choice. And then sometimes, you have to be careful of persons how they try to lead you astray. People who come to you and say, they are of God, and you shouldn't be going through this as a Christian.
Oh, yes.
As somebody who obeys God's commandments, you shouldn't go through, have to endure this. No, man, something not working, something is wrong. The church, they corrupt or something. You have to be careful who you're getting the guidance from. But suffice to say, a lot of persons in that position, or even worse, you may not even have been sold into slavery or been thrown into prison for a crime you didn't do. It's far less than that. But you're ready to close the door on God. But there's a purpose behind why he had to go through what he was going through. And sometimes the comforting truth you're going to get from your problems is by telling yourself that God knows best. God knows why I'm going through what I'm going through. Now, there is a thin line, because sometimes, if we're honest, we cause it. Be honest, tell the truth. Sometimes, we cause a problem. We put ourselves in certain situations, and it results in, God had nothing to do with it. We take it upon ourselves. And then we cry to God for it. And then when God doesn't, quote unquote, come through, we say, boy, God thing now work out. Gone. But I'm talking about those problems that you face that is not necessarily your doing. Like you find yourself at a workplace, for example, and the environment is just so toxic. You're doing everything right. You're going to work on time. You're meeting all your targets. But somehow somebody is there just trying to fight your promotion. Things like that, the things that you don't have control over. Those things you leave it up to God. Those things you take right actions that can help to alleviate the stress or the problem. Here's the next part about Joseph, why his story is so remarkable. Joseph found himself in a home as a slave, and the slave master's wife see the young man and see how handsome him is and all of that. Handsome guy, good body. When him out in the yard, I cut whatever he must cut in, the abs and the muscles and everything was just there. And she said, that man, you're goodie. She draw for the young man. And the young man have to say, listen, God don't leave anything outside of my possession, my master. Sorry, right, thanks. My master has left nothing outside of my possession. I'm in charge of everything except you. And I don't want to do this wrong and sin against God. And the scripture says in Genesis 38 that it's day after day after day the woman press him. Want the man body. She see the young man and, him a flex. And she want him. I lust after the young man. Listen, man, enough of we know. If we're in that position, listen, God, you caused me for the here, so. Blame God. It's you caused me to be here. And so anything you throw at my feet, I gotta deal with it. And it's your problem. But Joseph was a man of character. And no matter what happened to him at the time, Joseph was resolved that no amount of temptation is going to let me sin against God. Despite me suffering, no. Despite having brothers who sold me into slavery, despite they attempting to kill me. There's nothing that is going to happen to me that's going to make me sin against God. That's the resolve that we should all have as Christians who are encountering problems after problems. And I don't know how it was, but I mean, Potiphar was pretty relentless. Potiphar's wife was pretty relentless. She wanted him. She desired him. But he did not give in. And guess what? I thought about it. As a slave, you can't even go to the master and say, listen, your wife, you're mad. You can't tell the husband that. As a slave, not going to happen. Not going to go down well. Because he's going to take her word over your word. So he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. His best chance of dealing with the circumstance was running from the woman. Best chance. And if he could have rent somewhere and live, he would have do it. But he couldn't. He had to stay or remain in the house. So Joseph spent 13 years in Egypt before he became the second in command over all of Egypt. And so I say all of that to show you that sometimes your problems serve a purpose. And the encouragement is don't waste your problems. Sometimes you have problems, don't run away from it. Find out what is the purpose behind it, because sometimes there's a lesson behind the problem that you're going through. Sometimes there's a reason, there's a moral. And if we constantly run away from them, we won't learn. The millennials, when they enter the workforce, the moment things get uncomfortable, I'm gone. Why? Because they live a life of comfort for so long that any sort of inconvenience it can't happen. It's not tolerable. And we see it a lot in the workforce. The moment you have a bad day as a manager and you talk to the staff, inappropriately sometimes, them start look for job. They want to leave. And not only that, sometimes they don't wait until they get another job, They leave the job, they have no money, and then just fall back on parents because parents are always there to rescue them. Yeah, man, it happens. They walk away because they should not be disrespected at all. So I am walking away, leave this paycheck, and I'm going to go to my mother's yard until something work out. Yes, man. Parents will deal with it. There is a purpose behind your problems. There may be a purpose behind your problem. But if you keep running away from it, you lose that opportunity to learn. That's the philosophical perspective. So when you have problems, try to find what is the purpose behind it. Next thing, the second one and the last one. There's a psychological perspective when it comes to problems as well. And this one states that the problem is a problem because of how you perceive it. It's your perception of the problem makes it a problem. When I was just joining my company, my manager at the time called me and she was saying, listen, when you come to the department, a lot of persons are going to have things to say about me. And they may be negative, some may be positive. But I want you to decide for yourself. So many times we hear of things and we immediately form a perception about it. And we make a decision that this is going to be a problem. Without even giving the thing a chance. We just hear say, and it becomes a problem because of our perception. And our perception is shaped by a lot of different circumstances that I'm going to run through. But I want to give you this story first about the prophet Elijah. Elijah was a man, he was no stranger to the miracles of God, the powers of God. He was no stranger. This is a man who withheld rain for 3.5 years. That's how connected this man was with God. He was connected with God right throughout. He was fed by ravens. Which bird a feed me? No, no. But for show you how in tune this man was, that even the ravens fed him. He went to a widow's house, and the widow only had an ounce of flour and oil. And him said, yeah man, feed me. First. Because in her mind, she was gonna make the last meal that she could make for her and her son, and then they're gonna die. She said it, we're gonna die after this, because there's no way we're gonna get any food. And the man of God said, feed me first. Feed me first. And that woman never ran out of oil and flour for the whole period of the famine. A man of power, a man with in tune with God. Now if I come to your house and you're running low on groceries and I say, feed me first. No, no found now, feed me. But this man was a man in tune with God. This man was a man of God. This man recorded the first resurrection in the Bible of the young boy. Yes. Power. Resurrected the young man. Dead. I don't care what the naysayers want to say. And he was just asleep or him unconscious. Him dead. And he raised him back to life. This man was so in tune with God that he confronted the 450 prophets of Baal. 450 is not a small number for one person, you know. A lot of us have problems with one person and we wouldn't confront them. One person and we still wouldn't confront them. This man was so confident in God. He could confront 450 prophets of Baal. And not only that, call down fire from heaven. And the fire consumed barrels of water. Wet up. Him says, soak it. And the fire consumed it. Water couldn't quench the fire. He led a nation, the nation of Israel, back to God, because when they saw the miraculous power, they were saying, the Lord is God. The Lord is God. They were turning back to God, even though they eventually went back and do foolishness. And after the rain, the drought, he prayed for the rain. And after he sent his servant on the mount, 7 times, first time the servant go up there, you see an ounce of cloud. Servant go back the 7th time, and he saw a cloud the size of a hand. I don't know how he see that, or he hide them so good. But even if it was clear, but he saw it. And then Elijah didn't need any more signs to know that rain is coming. So he went down and he told Ahab, the rain is coming and you need to go before it catch you. And Elijah with the Holy Spirit take off speedily. No use in. Eh? Run left horse and chariot, everything. And reach before King Ahab. Let me tell you how this man was so in tune with God, you know. God, it was like God's best friend. But something psychologically happened to Elijah after that. Because when Jezebel heard of all the things that Elijah had done and how him slaughtered the prophets of Baal, and she sent one threat to Elijah and say, let me read it for you. May God deal with me, may it be ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of the dead prophets. One threat from a woman.
Come on, man, that's a problem.
I didn't say that.
No,
I'm just saying though.
well,
She was, it was a woman. One threat. I don't know how. So, a man who, I see this is again, a lesson for those who are strong, who you have a relationship with God. You feel comfortable with your relationship with God. It just took one threat from a woman to collapse all of that. So the psychological perspective now, the reason he started to see, started to have those problems, despite having the encounter with God so much, is that I think Elijah got to the point of emotional burnout. Emotional and physical burnout. Because you would think that after all of that, fire from heaven, withholding rain, calling back for rain, that somehow in life would start to get easier. The people of Israel are turning back to God, and it should be, getting a little more comfortable. But Jezebel doubled down on our efforts now and said to Elijah, send a message to him, you think me dey start yet? Eh? When me done with you, you think me did start? And him catch him freed. Elijah, the man of God. And him run away. Sometimes when we talk about burnout as if it can't happen, especially to our spiritual leaders. We talk about burnout as if it's impossible. But it's very much possible, especially it's not enough to just pray for your elders, pray for your leaders, pray for those who serve. It's not enough. Sometimes they need to go on vacation. Sometimes they need rest. Don't just pray for them, but let them have some rest. And what that means is, you see, the more we lose control of our problems and we get ourselves into problems, it's more work for them to do. But the more we maintain our lives and we overcome our problems, it's less burden on them. So they can focus on teaching the word and building you up spiritually. But it makes no sense to come here week after week, hearing the spiritual lessons and leaving the same. It makes no sense. And then you're calling for the pastor to come visit your home because, there is turmoil in your household and you need somebody and so on. Some of these things can be managed and managed better. But if we're all failing, then it's just more work for the servants of God. They can be burnt out. And it's not a case where we have any full-time ministers. Some of these ministers, we all have their jobs. And this is something that we do out of, love and consideration for the brethren and, of course, for God. But we have to, at all costs, help to prevent leaders from experiencing the spiritual burnout. He likely also had unmet expectations, which caused him, psychological problems or trauma. Again, Jezebel doubled down on her efforts to come to destroy Elijah. And he started to feel a sense of loneliness. He started to feel alone. He said to God, can I find it? 1 second. God said to him in 1 Kings, What are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here? And he replied, I've been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. And I am the only one left. Sometimes when you feel like you're alone in the struggle, you're alone having the problem, sometimes that alone is psychologically burdensome to you. He felt alone. He felt he had some unmet expectations. He was burnt out. He was tired of it. So when he ran away, he ran a 40 days journey away from the area because he just wanted to be done with it. I can't take no more. I cannot do this any longer. Jezebel is coming after me. And not only that, if you check Jezebel's track record, she had a track record of killing the prophets, you know, with 100% precision, you know. So this man had a right to just be afraid, although he was a man of God. He was in tune with God, but he was overcome by the trauma, the psychological perspective of the problem. So those are the two that I want to share with you today. And I'm going to wrap up and give you a framework for how to deal with problems. Anybody have a framework for how to deal with problems, or you just deal with them as them come? That is it, one day at a time. As them come, we just deal with them. But you don't have a framework to deal with it. I want to give you a framework that when you encounter the problems, first thing you do is to run it through the framework to overcome. Anybody facing a problem that you think is insurmountable? Can it be overcome? It can be overcome. I'm asking a question. It can, right? It can, right? All right. It can't.
Maybe they don't know how, but it can.
You don't know how.
They don't know how, but it can be.
I agree that there are some problems you have to accept. Acceptance is part of dealing with the problem as well. But don't accept it and then continue to murmur and bicker and quarrel and say God this and God that. If you're accepting it, accept it. Accept it with grace. Boy, this is my thorn in my flesh. But God's grace is sufficient. Accept it, man. But don't tell me say accept it and you still complain about it and murmur. You've not accepted it. But for the problems that can be overcome, the nature of problem is that it requires a solution. And there is a solution. There's a solution to every problem. Else it wouldn't be a problem. What would it be? I don't know, but there's a problem. There's a solution to every problem. Mm-hmm. All right. So the first thing you do when you have a problem is to identify whether it's philosophical or psychological. Philosophical problems shape who you become. Did you get that? Philosophical problems, they shape who you become. If you avoid those philosophical problems, you won't become your best version of yourself. Philosophical problems shape who you become. The psychological problems shape your perception of things. So it's how you think, how you view the world and your surroundings, the things around you. Let me give you an example of a philosophical problem. You grew up in an unloving home. The problem is that you can choose to become a loving person or an unloving person. You can choose. Yeah, man. You grew up in an unloving home. You can choose to be loving, a loving person, or you can choose to be an unloving person. Meaning, you don't have to become what you experience. And too often people become what they experience. A lot of who I am today is because of negative experiences. And I have resolved not to be that person. For example, I'll give you a personal example. Like most Jamaicans, when I was growing up, Sunday was always a day for chores. I hated it. Anybody love doing chores on Sunday? But it's a fact of life. So you still do it, you don't have a choice, right? Oh, so it's one day alone you can do chores. So the thing in my household is we ensure that the house is clean right throughout the week. So on Sunday, house is clean, and I don't have to be reminded of the trauma of cleaning the house on Sunday. Yeah, it's traumatic because I remember the mornings when mom would come in the room and unplug the fan and open the windows. That's after staying up late, chatting on the phone with your friends, and you're tired. You just want to sleep. But then she started banging up the cupboards in the kitchen because she's washing up and she wanted to know that she's washing up. Most people do that. Most parents do that. Right? Because they want you to wake up and help and do your part. Right? But that was such a traumatic experience for me, man. I make sure to keep the house clean during the week so that on Sundays I wake up and I can relax. All right. So that's what I mean by you have traumatic experiences, but you can choose to continue along those lines or you can choose to divert. You always have a choice. Psychologically, though, if you grew up in a household where you were emotionally neglected, where every time, for example, the husband leaves the home, it causes some amount of anxiety that may have stemmed from the fact that you were abandoned as a child. And so you're married now, your husband leaves the home, you get a little anxious. Where him gone, what is he doing, who is he with, and so on. You constantly call the phone. It don't happen to me, nobody thinks I'm me. It don't happen to me, but I'm just saying that it can happen. Or, the reverse is also true, where if you grew up in a house where there's constant quarreling, bickering, and fighting, nobody seems to be on the same page, then an empty house to you is like peace of mind. No. You know what I mean? So, your philosophical problems shape who you become or who you can become. Your psychological problems shape how you view things or how you perceive them. So here's the last thing I'll give you. This is a framework. The framework says problem. It's an acronym. And I'm going to ask you to remember it at the end. So the first letter is P for problems. No, it's not for problems, sorry. No. I'm just saying P. P stands for pause and pray. So before reacting, before you take a breath, bring it to God. Ask God what is He trying to show you in the situation before you react. Too many times we encounter problems and we just go into solve it mode without even understanding why it is that we're going through what we're going through. What is it that God wants to show us, and so we can ultimately shape the person that God wants us to be. So that's, what is P? Pause and pray. Good. R is recognize the root cause of the problem. So you identify what the problem is and not the symptom. The symptom is that you're angry now, you're upset now. But why are you upset? Identify the root cause of the problem. It's not about calming down the person, but understanding why the person is behaving how they're behaving. What makes them angry? Why are they angry? You ask yourself the question, am I stuck in this situation because of my situation or because of my mindset? There's a difference. Am I stuck? Am I stuck? Or is this my mindset? A lot of us can move forward, but we tell ourselves that we're stuck because that's our mindset. We can't move. This person is going to block me from getting ahead. So we address the problem, not the symptom. Oh, here's where most of us fall down. Own your response. We don't take accountability for nothing. Just like what Adam did with Eve. It's the woman that you gave me. He didn't take accountability for the fact that he partake of the tree that God told him not to. He tried to pass the blame on the woman. You have to own your response. You have to take accountability, and you have to be honest about your role in the problem. It's always somebody's fault. And they make me behave so. What is your response? What's your role in causing the problem? Or even alleviating the problem as well. So you may even not be the cause of the problem, but you still have a role to play to alleviate the problem. Because if it's a problem and it's your problem, you have to alleviate it. Nobody wants to stay in a situation where the problem is just there, festering, and you're getting uncomfortable. So own your response. Be accountable. Believe there's a purpose. There's a reason you're going through the problems that you're going through. There's a purpose behind it. There's a lesson that you need to learn. If you're in a situation that is uncomfortable means that there's a problem. What's the problem? After you identify the problem and you know the root cause, you have to believe that there's a purpose behind it. Sometimes there's no purpose behind it, but you cause it. You understand? But we're not talking about those problems. We're talking about the problems that you have no control over. So B, believe there is a purpose. L, lean on the community. Lean on the community. That's why we're called a body. Don't just in isolation try to deal with your problems on your own. You have to lean on the body. Share with somebody. Seek help. Seek advice. And for Christ's sake, take the advice. Take the help. Do something about the situation. Don't just lean on the community just for leaning's sake with your dead weight. Do something. Take the advice and move on. E, engage in wise actions. Don't just pray about it. Don't just bring it to God, but take action. Sometimes I get requests. For example, somebody would say, pray for Jordan, for example, my brother. He just have this bad habit of using the toilet and don't flush it. For example, right? Let's give you an example. He might have this nasty habit. This Crystal did ask me to pray for him. Just kidding. But I want you to get the principle though of the story. He has this bad habit of using the toilet and not flushing it. She comes to me and she says, please pray that Jordan flushes the toilet. I am not going to pray for Jordan. Because there's something he can do about it. Just flush the toilet. And so I'm not necessarily going to pray for changed behavior, because your behavior is always within your control. Your behavior, even how you respond to the person, is within your control. So I was running a joke with, I don't even know if I should say this, but sometimes we take up the prayer line with some menial things, like Jordan not flushing the toilet, when God could focus on my problems that are more sincere and, are more urgent. But Jordan is there now, not flushing the toilet, and I need to waste my prayer now. I don't have enough prayer. I have to waste my prayer on Jordan. No, man, sometimes people must do better, man. No, call a spade a spade. People can do better. The behavior that we have, don't ask me to pray for somebody's behavior. They must change. Allow me to tell? You agree, right? They can't do it. It's not outside of them control. Do it, man. Change, man. It's just about that's all I have to do. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But the principle still stands. So that's E. So you engage in wise action. And M. M now is you monitor your mindset, your mentality. Because sometimes problems come back with a vengeance. And you think that you didn't have the skills and you're equipped to deal with this problem, and it come back. And you have to deal with it again. And when it come back now, same level and everything, you know. Just same level, nothing increase in terms of intensity, same thing. But you fail this time around. Which may seem to suggest that you haven't learned. So you have to monitor your mindset to ensure that you're actually growing. So that you're actually transforming, be it transformed by the renewal or the renewing of your mind. Pay attention to what you constantly let inside your mind. So that's the framework. What the framework spells? Problems. So every time you have a problem, you run it through the framework. What's the P? Pause and pray. And what is the R? Recognize root cause. What's O? Who's going to do that going forward? One person, two persons, three persons. Going to own 4 persons. Own your response, please. I think out of all of them, the O is the most important one. Own your response. No, yes. They're not what? No, man, I realize. Nobody else is owning anything. But I mean, that's the hardest part. It's easier to pass the blame on somebody. But starting today, we can own our response and our reaction. All right, what come after O? B? Believe there is a purpose. And L? Lean on the community. E? The problems cannot be solved without taking action. Sometimes problems require you to stand still. That's an action, right? But sometimes, other times, it requires action. It requires change. It requires that you do something. And M, very important as well. So if you're going to become, you're not going to become problem-free, but you're going to become experts in problem solving. You run your problems through the framework. You bring it to God. You own your response. And you find the root cause. You do all of these things. And I'm sure that you'll handle problems much better. God bless you.